So yeah, welcome, Peter. Thanks for jumping on and doing this with us.
That's absolute pleasure. Nice to be here.
I remember seeing you because this is not the first time you've talked about this or given this talk. You've done it once before, and it's probably one of my favorite ever talks from a WLPC because it just really flipped my thinking.
Mm.
And so I love it when something challenges me and then I learn something from it. And this is that sort of topic. So I was really keen to cover it again now that we're 8 years ago you did it now, I think we
It's
worked out.
8 years, yeah, since I first thought about it.
Yeah. And then you only had 10 minutes as well, which you obviously did a great job of getting the topic over in the 10 minutes, but we can do it a lot more justice here and maybe help some of the people that aren't CWNEs to understand it a bit.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think hopefully we can do have a bit more of a discussion about it. And again, you guys can chime in and tell me I'm wrong if I'm wrong on something, and we can debate it. And then, come to the realization that I was right after all. That's fine.
Yeah, that's like every conversation I have with Peter.
Um, so
Awesome.
shall we shall we make a start then?
Have you got some
Um,
slides?
I do. I will share my screen and then we
Hey, real
can.
quick, housekeeping stuff. We'll have myself and Dan in the chat, so we can have a little sidebar conversations in there. But yeah, if you do have questions, be sure to open up that Q&A panel, get those submitted in there, and then we'll do our best to get Peter to answer as many of those as we can while we've got some real expertise on the call here.
Yeah, and please do ask questions. I actually really love questions, so keep them coming. Um, hopefully you can see my screen.
Yes.
So I feel that at the beginning of this really is just a confession to say, I love CCI. Um, and I'm happy to confess that, publicly on the internet now, for all to hear. So I guess we should talk about why, but I think first of all we should talk about what CCI is. Um, before I, confess to all my sins on one webinar.
Just one for today. Just CCI.
Yeah, just CCI. And I think CCI, it's something which has got a bad rap. And I guess what I want to do today is try and, be a little bit of an advocate for it because we've heard all the news, headlines. CCI is bad. It's going to slow your network down. It's bad for performance. What other headlines are there? You've got to minimize your CCI, destroy it before we die. It's that bad, CCI. Whatever you do, get rid of CCI from your network because it will kill your performance. It just is the reason why your Wi-Fi sucks. Okay. So it's comments like that which made me want to talk about it 8 years ago and makes me still want to talk about it now. Um, so I decided to talk about why I love CCI. So, first of all, CCI stands for co-channel interference. I hope that most people are happy with that. What is co-channel interference? Well, let's talk about it very simply to begin with. It's when we have two access points which can hear each other on the same channel. Okay, so an example here on it's a little screenshot with a couple of triangles representing APs. Um, and if they're both on channel one and they can hear each other, we're going to say they're going to cause co-channel interference. Two access points on the same channel. It could be both on channel 36 if it was a 5 gig channel. Same thing if they were both on the same 6 gigahertz channel. So that's what we're talking about when we're talking about CCI. Um, and we generally think of that as being bad, don't we, Andrew?
Well, we do, yeah. Airtime's the most precious thing in Wi-Fi. So if they're on the same channel, then we've split that airtime, surely.
Yep, you absolutely have split that airtime, and that's not a good thing. So I think that's in terms of talking about what it is before we get on to why I like it so much. Um, And these two APs on the same channel, they can hear each other. It's better. I thought it'd be good to talk about how we visualize this in Hamina and sort of show it in Hamina, and then so we can understand what's bad and what's okay CCI, okay, and how we visualize it, because I think that's important. So in Hamina we call it's underneath the interference visualization. So you're going to look at interference. We're talking about CCI, and just for a quick example to help us understand how we might visualize it. I've got four APs. I've not put a heat map. I'm in a building plan behind it just for simplicity. Four APs, and you'll notice the two APs, one on the right and the left-hand side, are on the same channels. Both on channel 36, or the 5 gig channel, 6 gig channel, channel 5, and both on channel 1. So these are two APs that are configured on the same channel, potentially will cause us co-channel interference. If we so are they causing co-channel interference? That's what we want to determine. So these are the two APs we're going to concentrate on, and let's have a look at some thresholds and coverage areas. The green circle I've drawn around each of those APs is our primary signal strength threshold. So where do we meet minus 65 or higher? Okay. And which I've decided our primary signal strength is going to be minus 65. So that's the area where we want to be connected. But then I've drawn two other areas, and I'm going to talk about what those are. One we're calling the association limit, SSI. And that's the area where you're likely to be connected to the AP. Because what happens when you're connected to an AP, you're moving away from it, and you get beyond your primary signal strength. So you could your signal drops from minus 65 to, let's say, minus 66. What normally happens to a client at that point? Anything?
Might start to probe, but no.
Might do, yeah, but it might not do anything. And there's that period between it losing the primary signal strength. Most clients won't do anything. And then they'll have a certain roaming threshold where they'll roam. iPhones typically around minus 72 dBm when they roam. Hence why I've picked minus 72 dBm on this example. So the yellow-orange circles show this area where you could be associated to the AP, the minus 72 threshold. Once we go beyond that, we'd expect our client to roam. Okay? And then but when we're talking about interference, we're really talking about where I can hear another AP. And I'm going to be able to hear an AP if I can hear it and decode its frames, which is normally down to sort of minus 82, 85 dBm, where I can still decode the frames. So the red area shows where I could hear and decode the AP signal. And I've called that the minimum interfering RSSI. Now, these are two thresholds you can actually set in Hamina, the association limit and the minimum interference RSSI. We'll have a look at that in 1 second. But why are they important? Well, at the moment, do we have co-channel interference? What do you think, Andrew?
Well, the two red areas are overlapping, and if I was in the middle of there, connected to 136 or 5, I would be able to decode the signal from 2. So
Yeah, you
possibly.
would. Yeah, absolutely right. So you're exactly right. In that area where they overlap, the area right in the middle here, you are going to be able to hear both APs. The thing is, though, would you ever be on channel 36? Let's do 5 gig for now, just for simplicity. Would you ever be on channel 36 if you're on 5 gig? Probably not, because you're beyond the limit, minus 72 limit, where you would have roamed. So you're more likely to be connected to one of these two grey APs on the slide. So actually, do I care about, do I have co-channel interference there? Yes, I can hear two APs, but does it matter? No. Now, there's some other Wi-Fi tool vendors, which will remain nameless, which would show that as interference. But I don't think it is, because you'd never be connected. So I actually think how Hamina works, it will not show that as interference in Hamina because I'm never going to be connected. What happens if we move our APs a bit closer together? So I've just moved them together. And now our association limit is overlapping with the interfering RSSI from another AP. So you can see the two shaded areas there. These are areas where I could be associated with its first AP on channel 36, and within this shaded area, I can hear my other AP on the same channel. That is co-channel interference. And that's what I want to visualize. And that's exactly how Hamina works. So if we look in Hamina on the interference map, there's a couple in the global settings. There's a couple of settings you can set: association limit, RSSI, and minimum interfering. These are those two thresholds we just talked about, and we can configure those. Now, Hamina does a great job of minimizing interference by picking lower channel numbers. But if we look on 2.4 gig, we can see that there's some interference here. And when I hover over it, you'll notice just above that visualization legend, it tells me the APs which I can hear. And there's 3 APs on channel 6. And that's within an area where I could be actually associated to an AP on channel 6. I can hear 2 other APs. That's what co-channel interference is. Make sense?
Okay, so where your mouse currently is on the map,
Yes.
it's feasible that the client might join channel 6,
Yes.
probably if it was 2.4 only. And so there is co-channel. But the green areas, although there may be multiple APs overlapping there,
Mm.
the client's highly unlikely to be connected on any of those channels in the green areas because there's a better, closer AP or it's outside the association of the interfering channels.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying. And the green area here, we've got set to 2, which means we are actually allowing 2. So even in some of the green areas, there's one other AP that might be interfering with the one I'm connected to. But we're saying we're okay with that for now. And we can change that threshold. So I hope that is a good introduction to what co-channel interference is. Okay. Um,
As
so
we've got so much time compared to the first time you did
yeah,
this, Peter, is it worth, and you might have slides on this, but I say stepping back a bit, to be like, why is 2 APs on the same channel a problem? What does the Wi-Fi protocol do to make sure it's not talking over something else?
yeah, I think we'll probably get there.
Okay.
But I think it's bad. It's. I guess that's what I want to talk about. Is it bad? So this is what we've got here. Just as an example on the slide, I've got 2 APs. They're both on channel 36, which means they have the potential to talk over each other, share the bandwidth. Generally, they're going to share the bandwidth, um, and you're going to get less throughput. Agree with that?
Yeah, this would be a
And
bad design.
it would be a bad design, and it'd be a bad design because those two, all the clients there are all on channel 36, and they will hear both APs, and they'll have to share the bandwidth. And you can set it up in a lab and do the test. If you have multiple clients all on sharing that same channel, they actually share the bandwidth of the channel between them. The way I like to think of it is a channel has so much capacity. Some people think about an AP as having so much capacity, but in reality, it's a channel. And the more devices on that channel, the more they're going to share that bandwidth. So that would be a bad design. We agree with that.
Yeah.
Okay. So next question. That's a warning, CCI there. Okay. Bad. We don't like it. Not good. But is this okay? Have you ever designed a network like this where we've got one AP on channel 36, we've got BSS1, BSS2, one might be corporate, the other one might be guest. Is that a good design? Is that okay? Are
Yes,
we allowed to do that?
this is exactly how we design APs, putting out virtual APs, BSSIDs to host different needs for different clients. Yeah.
Yeah. And we would say that's okay. Okay, so the question is, and this is where I think we really need to chat about, do we have CCI?
Well, no, because you've only got one AP.
Hmm. I've only got one AP, so I don't have CCI. So the question is, what's the difference between those two scenarios? So here we've got two APs. One's got BSS1 on it, one's got BSS2. That's on the right hand side. That's bad. That's CCI. That's not good. On the that's on the left hand side. On the right hand side, we've got one AP, two BSSs. There's 8 clients in total. What's the difference?
Um, I guess maybe having one AP would uh, have some sort of graceful scheduling of things like beacons and stuff. But yeah, from an airtime point of view, I guess it's the same consumption.
It is, but both the AP on the right hand side will beacon twice every 100 milliseconds. The two APs will beacon once each, so you'll still get two lots of beacons. You're going to have 8 clients all contending for exits. From an airtime point of view, they're identical. Okay. They're absolutely identical. And I think the thing here is what's the main difference is actually the lepton one costs you twice as much money because you've bought two APs. So there's a physical cost difference. But when we're thinking pure airtime, they're actually equal. Okay. And that's what
Not
I
nah, not just two APs, but also two switch ports, PoE budget, all that kind of stuff. Yeah,
yeah. So you
adds up.
wouldn't do this, okay? You wouldn't put two APs like that. But I want to think from an airtime point of view that actually they're equal. So when we just quickly go back to my last time, do we have CCI there? Well, we have airtime contention. And we have the same issue that we have with the two APs. Okay. If you did throughput tests, you'd get the same sort of throughput in both those scenarios over the air.
I think that's a crazy realization. The
Mm.
one on the right is what we designed for. The one on the left is what we design out, and yet you're telling me a throughput test would be roughly the same on both because it's the same airtime utilization. That's just crazy.
It's crazy when you think about it. So a couple of other let's have when we think about it, what we've got on one side is we've got 8 stations contending for channel 36. And even if I just do one BSS on the other side, now, not two, we've got 8 stations contending for access to channel 36. So I've not changed anything, even by putting one SSID. Contention happens on every single network. And the more devices we put on a channel, the more you're going to share that throughput. The number of SSIDs only really affects how many beacons is. So the only difference now between the two I've got here is on the left-hand side, we've got twice as many beacons. So we've got a little bit more management overhead. That's what we've introduced. Okay, let's just to sort of further my little soapbox. What about it? Which is worse? Now we've got BSS 1 and 2 on the left-hand side, okay, and there's 4 stations contending for access to channel 36 across 2 APs. But on the other side, we've got 8 stations contending for channel to 36, which is worse, which is going to get the worst throughput per client.
Yeah, you're kind of digging all these holes for me to fall down into, I can tell.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
yeah, again, we design for the one on the right, we design out the one on the left. So the right's got to be better based on best practice.
But it's not because there's more devices on the channel. So they're going to get less throughput. Um, and this is why I just want people to rethink this a little bit is that why do we design it out? We design it out because what we're actually trying to do is not design out CCI. We're trying to have as few devices as possible per channel. That's actually the aim. And I think if we think about it in those terms, then CCI it can often work out better. So here's the big point of what I want to say, and then we'll talk a bit more about this topic. We talk about co-channel interference. I actually don't love co-channel interference because I don't like the term. Okay, I hate the term because there's no interference going on. The reason I think it's misunderstood is because people think they're interfering with each other. Interference can happen if you've got something on channel 1 and 4 and 2.4 gig and they're overlapping and they can't hear each other, so they can't share the spectrum. But when they're on the same channel, you can hear each other. And in Wi-Fi, we listen before we talk. So because we can hear for each other, we're not interfering, we're sharing. We're contending with each other from the spectrum. So the big thing is we shouldn't be using the term co-channel interference. We should be using co-channel contention. Okay. That's effectively what we're talking about. And I think if we talk in terms of co-channel contention, not interference, we will not be as scared of it and we'll actually understand it better because that's what's happening. There's another name, though, for it, Andrew. Do you know what that is?
No, I don't.
Okay. So the other name for it is a distributed coordination function. This is something which people, you'll have learned when you've done your CWNE. I'm sure you do now know what the other name is for it. And it's just a method that stations use to contend for access. So when we're really talking about this concept which we've been talking about, co-channel interference, we're really just talking about DCF mode in operation. All the clients contending for and trying to access the medium. That's what we're talking about here. And the stations are designed to do it. In fact, if the station didn't do it, Wi-Fi wouldn't work. Okay, so just for people on the webinar, just make sure everyone's in it. What is DCF mode? Should we just cover that? The distributed coordination function. It's functionality which is defined in the standard, and it's the method that stations use to contend for access. So before you can transmit a frame, you've got to go through a certain number of steps. And for simplicity here, I broke it down into three steps if you think about it that way. And it's a little bit oversimplistic, but it'll work for the webinar. So the first thing you do before you can transmit is you always listen. Listen before we talk. So if somebody else on my channel is transmitting, I'm not going to transmit a frame. It could be another client on my BSS, on my AP. It could be another client or AP on the same channel somewhere else. But if I can hear it and decode it, I won't transmit. So we always listen before we talk. And if we can hear someone else on our channel, even if it's a different BSS, even if it's not one of my APs, it could be my neighboring APs. If I can decode it, I won't transmit. So that's the first thing we do. We sense if the medium's free or not. There's a whole lot more to it than just that. But simplistically, we listen before we talk. If when we listen, we determine that the medium's free, that's when we can move to step 2. So we can only go to step 2 when the medium's free. And the first thing we do when the medium becomes free is we stay quiet. We don't transmit. Which sounds a bit crazy because the medium's free, so why can't we get on with transmitting? But you see, between every frame on the wireless medium, there's got to be a minimum period of quiet. And we call that an interframe space. And there's different sizes of interframe space which helps to prioritize traffic. Let's just say I send you a data frame, Andrew. Okay. What's the next frame that I want to see on the wireless medium after I've sent you a data frame?
An acknowledgement.
And acknowledgement, absolutely. But before I get to send you an acknowledgement, before you get some acknowledgement, Dan comes along and he's got a frame to transmit and he goes, is anybody transmitting? Well, I've just finished, so I'm not. So if he jumped in beforehand, that wouldn't be good because I'm waiting for an acknowledgement. But you see, Dan would have to wait a longer interframe space than you would. You would wait a short one. He would wait something called a distributed coordination function interframe space, which is longer. So we have this minimum way to help prioritize frames like acknowledgements on the medium. So you listen. Anybody else talking? No. You wait your interframe space. Then what? Then you just transmit. Well, no, we go to step 3, where I've called it avoid collisions, but what it really means is you wait a bit longer. Because we like waiting, and this is where, and we're not going to talk too much about it on this webinar, but it's where you would wait a random backup timer. A lot of people will have been on training courses where we roll dice, and it's like rolling a dice. And the reason for that is, what if Dan wants to transmit a frame, Jerry wants to transmit a frame, you want to transmit a frame, I finish talking, you all wait the same interframe space, then what happens? If you all transmitted at the same time, collision. But we try and avoid it, so you all roll a dice, hopefully all pick a different number, and whoever picks the smallest number, they get to transmit first. And this is a process we go through to share the medium. And because we go through this process, that's how we share the medium. But we don't just do this within a BSS, we do it within a channel. So all devices are doing it, regardless of whether you're on my network, you're on a neighboring network. If we're all in the same channel and we can all hear each other, we all share the medium using this process. So when we're talking about co-channel contention, as we're going to now call it from now on, this is what we're talking about.
So, at the chance of making this a more complicated conversation, we did have a question from Kit, which basically kind of augments what you've just said a bit, which is he wants to know, does BSS coloring actually work? Because that was supposed to help alleviate some of this problem, right?
So BSS coloring was meant to help alleviate some of the problem. Just for very quickly, what it was meant to do was I listen, and at the moment, how standard Wi-Fi works, if I can decode your preamble, which is sent at the lowest 6 meg, if it's 5 gig, could be 1 meg, but if I can decode it, I go, oh, I can hear a frame. The medium's busy. But that could be an AP that I can hear at -90, a long, long way away on the same channel of me, and it causes me to be quiet and not transmit. BSS coloring was meant to help that by allowing a limit to be set. So you can say, well, okay, I can hear you, but if you're not stronger than, say, neg 70, I'm going to try and talk over you. Because if I'm talking to a client, I'm an AP in the same room as me, we can both shout over it. That's a really quiet voice in the background. And you would be able to talk over it. So that's what BSS coloring is meant to do. I don't think any clients have ever implemented it. So does it work today? No.
So have AP vendors implemented it, just no client vendors?
There's some support for it in some APs, some of the enterprise class APs, but I don't know any client that it works with.
Okay.
So today, no, it doesn't help. But yes, it should do. It's a feature I'd really like to see, because I think it's basically like, for those people who remember RX SOP, the Cisco proprietary feature. And Aruba had their own version of it at one point, I think. It's basically a standardized implementation of that. So it would be nice to get BSS coloring. I would very much like it. It does. It sounds, I saw someone in the chat say it sounds brilliant on paper, and it does. BSS coloring sounds really cool. Now, I don't want people to get confused by what I'm saying, okay? So let me just put a seminar on. This, an AP on channel 36 and channel 44, is better than 2 APs on channel 36. I do agree with that, okay? That will always be better, okay? So if you've got 2 APs, that are adjacent to each other, don't put them on the same channel, because Peter said he loves CCI. I don't want people to misunderstand what I'm saying here, okay? It is always better to try, it is better to try and not have CCI if you can, okay? So in a wireless design, we should attempt to minimize it, okay? And ultimately, what we're trying to do across an entire wireless design is have as few clients as possible on each channel. The fewer clients I've got on each channel, the better my performance will be. It's why when we're in a high density environment, we put multiple APs on different channels. If we can distribute our clients across all those APs, they're going to get better performance than in a lecture theatre having 700 clients all connecting to one AP. We put multiple clients in. We then want to get them distributed across them because they're going to get better performance. So that's still the aim. Okay. So I want to make sure we understand that. But CCI isn't always bad either. And that's what I want to try and bring us back to. And that sometimes designing it out at all costs can actually cause problems. So let's have a look at what I mean, if we may. See if this helps.
Here's one I prepared earlier.
This is something I prepared earlier. It is very. I've just done a design. I'm going to go to coverage first of all. Even look at 6 gig if you want.
You named the project wrong.
Yeah, I did. But it was particularly for this webinar. So here's my coverage. I've just wanted to cover this area here. I'm not interested in the rest of the plan. For this example, I'm just concentrating on this one little area. There's 4 APs. I've turned up the 5 gig radios only because I want to use the roaming man and I want it to roam on 2.4, not 5. So that's purely for the demo. I would normally have these 5 gig radios on, but we've got 4 APs. I think this might be quite a typical way you might design this area. Hopefully people would agree with that. We've got nice coverage. We've got APs not in the corridors. We've got them in the room. They're a bit staggered. I think it's not a bad design for this area of the building. Okay. It's not really meant to be a design webinar, but I think that's a reasonable design. Let's look at the interference then, because we were talking about interference. And I've got it set so that I'm interested in if there's more than one AP interfering with each other, I want to know. And on 6 gig, all's good, all's green. Let's look at 2.4. On 2.4, though, we've got interference. And this is a problem. We'll see we've got an AP on channel 11, 6, 1, 11. That interference is coming because there's 2 APs on channel 11. And which is a problem. Now, so let's think about how we go about fixing it. But before we do that, I want to suggest a scenario here. Let's say we've got 4 APs. Let's say we've got some clients distributed around each of these APs. So there might be some clients in this room, in this room. And let's say there's a nice distribution of clients. Okay, so let's put 10 clients on each AP. So now I've got 10 clients on my AP over here. 10 clients on this AP, 10 clients. If I'd done this very well, I would have named my APs and you'd have nice, I could talk to them by names, but I didn't do that. So we've got 10 clients on each AP. So the problem with co-channel interference is there's 20 clients on channel 11. Yes?
Yep.
20 clients on channel 11. We've got 10 clients on channel 1, 10 on channel 6. Now, how would we, if you've been on wireless design classes, how would you fix CCI on 2.4?
Disable a 2.4 radio if there's a coverage.
Yeah. So we've probably got, I've not designed help, but we've probably got other APs around here. So I maybe wouldn't want to do the one on the edge, but this one on channel 11, let's disable 2.4. Disable the radio. Yay, 2.4's CCI is gone. Okay, and we're happy. Okay. Let's have a look, though, at a few things. Okay. I'm going to first of all go back to having CCI. Okay. And we're going to put our little client view on the map. Okay. So we're going to have a client in this room. And he's connected to this AP. one of the 10 clients connected to this AP. What's he getting? He's on 2.4. He's on MCX 11, two spatial streams. So data rate 287 megabits on MCX 11. That's okay, isn't it?
Yeah.
So there's these 10 clients that are on this AP. When I disable it, where do they go?
To another AP.
They go to another AP. So in this scenario, I would, and which one do you think they would go to? Probably this one down here.
Yeah.
So in this scenario, I've got co-channel interference. I've got 20 devices connecting on channel 11, 10 on 1, 10 on 6. But what happens when I disable this radio? If all my 10 clients are now on channel 1, now I've just got 20 devices on channel 1, 10 on 6, 10 on 11. So in terms of the number of devices contending for a channel, I've just moved a problem to channel 1. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I've not actually improved anything. If we look at my client and I put him back here, we'll now see he's connected. Sorry, I've moved him up. This is sort of coming up. He's connected now to this AP. So all I've done is move my clients to channel 1. So I've got the same amount of contention. I've just moved it to another channel.
Actually, I would say you have more contention, right? Because now these clients are going to be taking more airtime.
Exactly right. And that's the other thing I want to look at. Look at its MCX now. MCX 4. So we were at MCX 11. We're now at MCX 4. We're at 103 megabits. So these clients now they've got a lower signal strength from this AP, so they're getting a worse throughput. So all the 10 clients that would have been connecting and contending at a higher data rate are now contending at a lower. So my contention on channel 1's got worse, not better. So I fixed CCI, but all I've done is moved 20 clients contending on channel 11 to 20 clients contending on channel 1, but actually they're getting worse throughput. And because they've got a low MCX rate, they're spending more time transmitting, they're causing more contention. I've made things worse. And this is the point that I really wanted to look at. So by getting rid of CCI, you can actually make things worse. And so we don't want CCI. It's not a good thing. If we can have none and have every AP on different channels, that's fine. But when we try and get rid of it at all costs, we actually often make things worse. And I think that's one of the things that the key points here.
So CCI is good.
So CCI can be good. I think, and I think that's one of the things I want to say here, and we can have more of a discussion on this, and we can look at a few more things. But I think, well, why do I love CCI? Because effectively it's DCF in action. It's a distributed coordination function. It's and that's fundamental to how Wi-Fi works. In fact, Wi-Fi wouldn't work without it. If you got rid of it, Wi-Fi wouldn't work. We'd all be transmitting over the top of one another. And we need it for Wi-Fi to work. So maybe I shouldn't be saying I love CCI. I should really be saying I love CCC because I do. And we need to make sure that we don't just arbitrarily start turning off APs, turning off radios. We always want to make sure we've got coverage first, secondary coverage, we've got capacity. Then we try and fix CI. But if by fixing CCI, we get rid of the coverage we need, the capacity we need, then I would rather have some CCI and have primary coverage, secondary coverage, have enough capacity for all my APs before we get then and have some CCI is what I'm saying. So make sure your network's going to work for your clients. And if you have to accept some CCI, okay, that's how Wi-Fi works. So I think that's the thing I want to try and say during this webinar. Um, and I think Hamina does a great job of visualizing it for us as well. Um, it also it does a great job of trying to visualize CCI for us. It does a great job of trying to minimize it in our designs automatically. It's automatically going to pick the channels and channel width for you so that you don't need to worry about it. Should we look at another thing on this topic?
I was going to ask if you had any survey data with CCI in it rather than designs.
Yeah, exactly right. So this is from the Wireless and Professional Conference in Phoenix last year. We actually set up a conference Wi-Fi network. Just move that AP a bit to where it actually was, and I surveyed it. So we had some APs on tripods in the conference center. So great SSID called Walrus Wi-Fi. We actually also on its Wi-Fi had the WLPC Passpoint SSID as well. That was on a few of AXA APs as well, though. So I've not got it selected for now. So these we'll see if I select an AP. It's got WLPC Passport, Walrus Wi-Fi on it. This was a main conference room, and we can see roughly what the coverage is like. There was some deep dive classrooms here. And with pretty thick walls, you'll see how the coverage from each of these APs doesn't really transfer into each of the other classrooms. So this is our quick survey, quick interference. Now, when we look at interference, though, this is what we see. It's just all red. Okay, not good. There was a lot of CCI. Now, why was there a lot of CCI? Well, there was a hotel zone network. There was neighboring networks. There was people setting up their own Wi-Fi. There was a lot going on. So to try and, so when I just look at this, you know, forgive me for going, it's just a mess. The whole network, nothing's going to work. No one's going to be able to transmit. Everyone go home.
38.
Yeah. It wasn't true though. People could transmit. Okay. So why is that? Well, what are we looking at? We're looking at the interference from every single AP. Okay, here. In the environment and how it's interfering. So, and it's very hard to tell, well, which are my APs here? So there could be two conference center APs interfering with each other, which isn't one of mine. Okay. So one thing I like to do when looking at a survey file, let's just go back to coverage. So I'm now looking at just my APs here, my Walrus APs. I'm just going to select all the APs, all these measured access points, and I'm going to change their color and make them purple, just so they're driven from the default blue. Okay, now I know where these were the APs I installed, and I know where I installed them. Okay, now, so if I looked at something like Hilton Honors, we can see that these other ones, these were the conference centers APs. And if I want to, I could make those a different color because I know there's another incumbent in here. So if I just take off, just look at the Hilton Honors, maybe we'll make these, let's make these green. Okay, so these are the conference center zone APs. I'm going to go back to my network, which is what I'm interested in, Walrus. And now we're going to go back to interference. And I think already I can now see the purple ones, remember, are mine. The green ones are the conference centers, and then the blue ones are any other APs that we're picking up. So we can see just how much and how many devices there are in this area. But when I want to assess it, well, which APs are going to have a problem? If I click on each of my purple APs, we can see that this one isn't actually getting any interference from any of our APs. So if you connected to this AP, you wouldn't be having an interference problem. Because actually, there's no APs interfering with channel 52. That's good to know, isn't it? Whereas before, it just all looked red, and I'm like, I don't know even how to say how to think about it. So actually, that's not going to be a problem. This one's got a bit of interference. It's not all red, but it's going to have a bit of a problem. That one's not too bad. And I can start to look at, where do I actually have a real problem? This one, however, I'm getting some patches here where I've got 4 APs causing a problem that's dark orange. So actually, this one might be a problem, and it's on channel 140. So that does seem to be causing me a problem. So the question is, what's causing that interference? So I can see which APs. But one thing I might want to look at is in global settings, we're looking at all networks, which is good to know. But is my network causing a problem? Just my APs? Well, we can switch to that, and we can see that even my APs are causing problems because there's one of my APs on 140, another one of my APs on 140. That isn't good. And we've got 2 APs on channel 108. So ROM hasn't done a great job here. Why? Well, remember how red everything was? It's because actually 140 was one of the cleanest channels. And I'd rather 140 no one else is using, so I'm going to put 2 of my APs on it. And is that bad? Actually, remember what we said? They're just going to share the bandwidth, these 2 APs. So for all my clients, they're sharing that bandwidth, but it's a free channel compared to all the other networks which are using all the other channels. Actually, ROM's done a good job. It's done what I would do, which is what I'm saying is CCI isn't always bad because 140 isn't being used by anyone else. So it's just being used by me. Yes, it's on 2 channels. Those APs are not really getting the benefit of having 2 APs, but at least that's okay. So I can start to assess CCI in a way which maybe I couldn't. And if I could find another channel that was free, I could maybe change its AP in my controller. But actually, in the end, that wasn't a bad channel because, yes, I'm using it, but nobody else is. And that's why the Wi-Fi actually wasn't working too bad. So by first looking at it, it's horrible. It's all red. But actually, my network, this AP was doing bad, but that's one of the hotel APs. Actual hotel APs were terrible. They were all on the same channel and they're getting red everywhere. But my network, it wasn't great. This was on the worst channel, actually. That was on one with all the hotel ones, 157. So I probably want to change that AP. But most of my APs were okay.
Given the situation.
In this situation, given the situation. And yes, these 2 APs are on the same channel, but I'm okay with that. And the clients connected down here are going to get a high throughput to this one. The clients connected in this area of the conference room will get a high throughput to this one because there's a big wall here, even though you can't see it. So actually, I'm okay them sharing the bandwidth. I'm going to leave both radios on.
Hey Peter, do you have access to the test Hamina test instance?
I do.
I shared a project with you, while it's just us looking at this survey data. I was hoping you could take a look at that
I
project
would.
for me, see if you have any tips on my
Free
design.
consultation from Peter.
Yeah, I mean, while you're looking at survey data, I figured I'd try and use you to look at my survey here, see if you have any suggestions for
Well,
me on
look,
this one.
you've shared a project with me, so
I
that's
did.
nice of
Yeah.
you.
Just throw your project links in the chat, people. We've got all night to go through them. Don't worry.
Maybe this is the new webinar format. Just, people share projects, be like, hey, we'll just get an expert on, take a look at your projects for you.
Yeah, we
Take
we
take
could
a
do
look
that.
at my survey here. Filter down to like 5 gigahertz. Oh, and you may want, since you're on the test instance, go to the to clean this up a little bit. Go into your preferences, change the beta feature that you have on there to hide the what does it show all surveyed APs. Turn that one off. That'll clean
Yeah,
things up a little bit in the test environment here.
it will.
But yeah, take a look at this and just filter down to like one of the SSIDs. Um, yeah, like the second one there in the list should be fine. There you go. Yeah, what do
Perfect.
you think about my design here, my deployment?
Okay, so
It's a trap.
I'm just having a quick look at it. So you've got an AP in this area, which is okay. You've got an looks like a wall-mounted AP maybe, or maybe it's not. It's hard to
It
say.
is actually mounted in a cabinet there, yeah.
Yeah.
There is photos as well to help you, help you a little bit here to
Oh yeah. It's nice. It's not mounted on a wall, so that's okay. It's not too bad. Shall we have a look at your other ones? Um, that's nice, ceiling mounted. But maybe close to a wall, but that's I'm not worried too much about that. And another ceiling mounted AP.
so
And
so coverage I'm not too concerned about
yeah,
with. I'm
coverage
more
looks
concerned
okay.
with the configuration here. How did I do with setting this up?
Should we look at the interference? As we're talking about interference, oh,
Four APs, five
you've got
gigahertz, and you
four
can't even do
APs
that,
and they're
Jerry.
all on channel 36 by the looks of it. So it doesn't look great that you've got all your APs on channel 36. Um, now, it doesn't look great from a CCI point of view. Um, they're all on channel 36
So
now.
well,
Now
for a little bit of context here, and this is, I think, a whole other kind of separate maybe conversation or kind of side conversation from this is the whole mesh concept, right?
yeah.
And the where that ties into like CCI. So wireless mesh deployments in particular, some people may not be aware of this on the
Mm,
on the call even of for mesh to work, those radios all need to be on the same channel,
they do.
right? For it to be able to have that backhaul, that mesh link.
Absolutely. No, they do. And I think that's really important because they do all need to be on the same channels if you're going to have them on a match because they've got to be able to talk to one another. And these are clearly match APs. I think the thing is as well, though, it's about where is match appropriate. If you were putting this into a high capacity office building, would you install a match network? Probably not because it's going to affect the capacity. In a home network where you've not got as many clients, and when Jerry's using this connected to this AP, he's over here. When he walks with his phone or laptop over here, he's now still on the same channel, but he's now getting a higher data rate because he's moved on to this one. He's no longer using it over there here. So you've got probably, I take it, fewer clients than you would have in an enterprise, and also not everyone using all the APs all the same time. And therefore, I think in a home network, it can work quite well. So again, it looks bad, but is it really?
Yep.
Um, is it in
It
fact, if you just had one AP in the center, you wouldn't get the same coverage, which most people do have, don't they? They have a home wireless router, it's one AP device. And as they get to the edges, they go, oh, we don't get very good signal because we're operating at a low data rate. What you've done by putting mesh in, it means that when I am over here, I'm getting a better signal strength, so I'm going to communicate at a high data rate. So this would work better than the single device in the center of your home.
Yep. To your
You've
point,
got
and to the whole
CCI.
point of the CCI thing, this network is actually working quite well. The user
Yeah.
is perfectly happy. They're not complaining about it or anything. But I did note that yeah, everything is on the same channel. But yes, if this was an enterprise environment with high density of users and
Mm,
things like that, this would not be optimal. So yeah, it depends.
it does depend. But it's but compared to having one AP, this will actually perform better. Um, so yeah, and it's about I guess the reason for this webinar is to just get people to rethink. It's not about saying that these are all we've got all the answers. It's not saying go ahead, have as much CCI as you want and don't worry about it. We still need to worry about it, but we don't need to go just because it's there doesn't mean it's a problem. And actually, if we got rid of it, would it be worse? That's the question I want people to ask. If I got rid of it, am I actually causing a problem by making my devices operate at a lower throughput and lower data rate, low modulation method? Um,
So we had a question in from Raymond that asks,
mm,
is the noise floor affected by APs sharing a channel?
it's a good question. So it depends what you call the noise floor. But I want to say no, but I want to be very careful what I mean by that. So the noise, not the noise floor, when you particularly talk about noise and floor, the noise floor is a sort of atmospheric noise that you get in an area. You're not naturally going to raise that by putting more and more devices, because remember, they don't transmit at the same time. They share the medium, so only one device transmits at any one time. So it's the same as one AP. So the answer is no. If you just said, does the noise increase? Well, it depends what you mean by noise. The Wi-Fi noise, if you don't if you count noise as non-Wi-Fi, again, there's no more noise. If you count noise as anything but my AP, then the other APs, some people might say that's noise to me. But I personally wouldn't, because I think if you can decode Wi-Fi, it's not noise because you can decode it, and Wi-Fi is meant to do that, decode it, hear it, and go, oh, I can hear you, so I won't transmit while you're transmitting. So my answer would be no for that reason.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Guys, any other questions you think we should jump in with?
There has been quite a few questions that have come in. There was a question actually that I did answer already, but I'm curious your thoughts on it, Peter, is around the, what RSSI do we need to consider from a CCI, CCC standpoint? What do we care about when it comes to that?
I think that's a really good question. And it was a question, I'll be honest with you, I at one point had wrong until I had a talk by Chuck Lewinsky a number of years ago. So when can I hear another AP? That it'll be loud enough that I will basically we do this thing called a clear channel assessment. It comes like there's a medium's busy or free. So when will a neighbouring AP on my channel cause me to say the channel's busy? There's the reason I was confused, and I'll talk about why I was confused, why I got it wrong, because some other people might have done the same thing. In the standard, it talks about the minimum signal strength a wireless device must be able to decode Wi-Fi at. Okay, there's an actual, and for a 20 meg channel, that's minus 82 dBm. It's written into the standard. So to be compliant with the standard, you have to be able to decode over Wi-Fi on a 20 meg channel at minus 82 or higher. So I used to say minus 82, but that's just a minimum. A lot of devices can decode much lower than that. How do we know? Well, a lot of data sheets will have something called a receiver sensitivity value, and that tells me what value I can decode down to. Now, it's measured in a lab where there's no noise in an isolated chamber, so very often, and you'll see things like minus 95 dBm, whereas in the real world with noise and other things, we might not be able to decode down. But I know when Chuck was talking about it, he was talking about some Aruba APs being able to decode minus 90 signals. So the answer for that Aruba AP was if it can hear something at minus 90 or higher, it'll go medium's busy. Because it's all about, can I decode the preamble or not? We call it preamble detect. If you can decode the preamble, you say the medium's busy. So it comes down to the receiver sensitivity of each device. So the question was, what's a good value to use? It's very hard. I tend to personally use minus 85 because I think in most environments, most devices can at least decode minus 85. Below minus 85, you tend to struggle. The actual rule is most people say when the signal to noise ratio is below 4 dB, you start to not be able to decode it. Obviously, that doesn't translate directly to a dBm value, which is why I tend to use minus 85. But if you're going to use minus 85, just know that some devices may be able to hear even further and even lower down than that. But I think minus 85 is a good
And I'm pretty
A
sure
good
by default, Hamina uses 82, but that is adjustable.
yes,
You can adjust that.
that's right. Hamina uses 82 by default. And I will be honest, I often adjust it to 85. It makes it harder to meet your CCI requirements. Um, so you're making that harder for yourself. But again, I think having we've already said that CCI isn't always bad, and I think that's why Hamina has that easier to meet threshold, because if it was 85 and people don't understand what we discussed on this webinar, everyone's going to try and get rid of the CCI, which we've got lots of, and you're actually going to make it worse. So I actually don't think so. If you're the sort of person who wants to get rid of it entirely, maybe have that threshold a bit higher, because we're not that worried about, little bits of CCI.
So we're out of time, but for anyone who knows our webinars, we'll just keep on chatting until you all leave, pretty much.
I
Um,
thought this was like
Be-
intermission, like this was part one of part two on the webinar.
Before
Take a
people
quick
leave, though,
bathroom
we
break.
we should do one thing before people
yeah.
leave. Everybody should raise their right hand with me and repeat after me. I solemnly swear, from this day forward, I will only use the term co-channel contention, and the term co-channel interference is officially banned from my vocabulary. Everyone good with that? It's my lifelong mission to get rid of CCI as a term. So, it's a good
I,
start.
I love that a few people were
I'm with
smart enough
you.
to raise their hand in Zoom. That was like a nice touch.
Yeah, yeah. I,
Um,
I enjoyed that too.
so,
Yeah,
Thank
so
you.
I
we've
like the
got
reactions.
we've had a bunch of good questions come in. So, Peter, if you can keep going, I think we'll
Yeah.
just try and get through them. And everyone who
Okay.
has to go to meetings because your day's carrying on, please do. But I think it's worth for the recording and anyone who can stick around going through some of these. Um, so, um, so Ben asked, how do you design for a plan where you've got high density in one area because they're having to image laptops or do MDM management before they go out? Do you just stick in more APs and have them, creating contention, or do you have more APs per more clients per AP, for example? Any tips there, Peter?
So, this is so was that like in the staging area, was it?
Yeah,
Or
exactly.
yeah, so a staging area is one area where you see this, and another area which I've recently actually been involved in some design discussions of is I don't know if you've seen you've gone to a supermarket or a store where they have scanners which you can do your own scanners you shop. You can take a scanner around, and they have normally by the door near the entrance supermarket, they have this massive wall where they're all charging. So in one small area, you've got like 200 devices when they're all in the charging station. So I think it's a little so how do you deal with that? Because actually there's going to be a lot of devices potentially, and you go, well, actually when they're charging, they're not really being used, but actually sometimes they push an update out to them all, and now you've got them all pulling data. And I guess it's the same in a staging area. Well, that if laptops are being staged, you potentially pushing a image out to 200 devices. So I think I like to try and basically put in dedicated APs for those devices. Is the way I tend to deal with it. Obviously on different channels if I can. So we've done it so where these charging stations are, we actually put an AP in the station or by it or with it or two, so that they can actually connect, and then and hopefully make sure that, because that's going to be hopefully the main AP that they connect to. We've also again in staging areas, I've done it where we have APs which could be turned on and off. So you could have some APs deployed so that when you're doing a staging, you actually turn them on, maybe with a staging SSID, but you can disable that SSID, and it effectively disables the radios when you're not doing, that work. Would
So when you
generally be
say
the way I deal
dedicated
with it.
APs in your first example, I presume you're not saying you dedicate just channel 36 and you don't use it anywhere else in the facility. You're just saying you have extra APs in that area that are only hosting the SSID for staging.
Yeah, or for these tablets, or yeah, I have some APs that are particularly only hosting that SSID in that area. That tends to be the way I deal with it.
But not with exclusive channels.
No, you can do that, but not if I don't need to. Um,
So
yeah, if
I
in
think
that area, when you're looking at 5 and 6, using 5 and 6 gig channels, you should within a particular area, you should look at, well, in my design for Wi-Fi. So I've done a design for that building and I've ignored this little high density area, let's say. So I've got it just covered by primary and secondary with normal APs on the ceiling. I look at what channels I'm using in that area and then maybe and use some different ones. Or I'm using RM, but I'll put some dedicated APs in for just those that high density
What
area. I'll put some
about
additional
more
APs.
on the antenna side of things? I'm thinking of actually the video I just saw that you published recently about omni versus directional. Would that be helpful in this case as well? Like
Yeah,
considering some very directional
100%.
antennas?
Yeah, 100%. So controlling that signal is really important as well. So again, a very narrow direction antenna above where you're doing it is going to help because what you don't really want is other APs connecting to it or your devices connecting to an AP you want your devices in that area to connect to the APs you want, not one outside. So by putting directional APs on, you can do that and try and control the signal. I'm a big believer in high density areas, whether it's these staging areas or it's just a standard high density office environment using directional APs to control the signal. Because
Yeah.
it's what we do, isn't it? We've got a high density area. We could cover it, and I'm talking about areas when I'm talking about high density, I'm talking about areas where you're putting additional APs into your design for capacity. So you've said design primary and secondary, so you've got your coverage, but then you look at it and you go, oh, I need more APs for capacity. I've got too many devices in its area, so you start putting extra APs in. In that scenario, if you don't do anything about if you just leave omnis in, then they're going to overlap with the other omnis in there. You're going to find it very hard to control which AP they connect to. What you tend to find in those areas, let's take a lecture theatre as an example. You've got a lecture theatre 800 seats, one AP covers the entire lecture theatre. I don't want 800 people on one AP. So I put, I don't know, 5 APs in. I've now got 5 APs. But if they're all omnis, what happens is you walk through, all the students walk in the same door at the back of the lecture theatre. They hit the first AP and they don't move off it because they've got great signal strength. So you've got 800 people on one AP, and the other 5 or 4 APs in there are doing nothing because no one's connected to it. Um, that's the problem.
I'm noticing a problem here with us answering these questions. Every time you answer one question, I think I see about 3 more questions get submitted.
Yeah. Well, that's a problem. So, and directional antennas can help do that by concentrating and focusing the signal into smaller areas. When you in that lecture theatre, you can then effectively get the client to roam because they leave the coverage area of one and move to another. But as you say, I published a YouTube video this week. Go and watch it. Omni
I
versus
did put it
direction.
in chat. That's a good one.
So another question or 2 questions that I think are basically the same topic that came in before we hit the hour.
Yeah,
And credit to both Nick and Jan for using CCC, not CCI in their questions. But basically they're saying,
thank you. Yeah.
how do you balance contention versus channel width and how do channel width impact the contention?
Yeah, it's a great question, I guess, really. You allow Hamina to do it all for you. That's the right answer, isn't it, guys? Yeah. I knew Dan would appreciate that. I think actually Keith Parsons says it's quite well. He says use a widest channel until you can't, which I actually quite like. Wider channels give us more capacity. They do. If I've got an AP with a wider channel, I can get more data through. But especially when we're talking about capacity, we're putting multiple APs in. We want those, goes back to what I said, we want those devices on separate channels if we can. So I want to have as small a number of clients on each channel as possible across my design. That's my aim. I don't want all the same within the lecture. I don't want all my devices connecting to one AP because they're all on one channel. I want to split them across channels. So if I use wider channels, I've got less channels to split my users across. If I use smaller channels, I've got more channels to split my users across. So if I'm happy, I say, actually, I can cope with 20 users per channel, but and in my design, that means I only have 20 APs. So I don't know. Oh no, let's say I've only got 10 APs. I can probably use 40 megabyte channels because I've got 10 separate 40 meg channels. If I'm using a 6 gig, I can maybe use 80 meg channels because I can have them all on a separate channel. I'll use wide channels. If I get to a point where I'm going to end up having CCC, two APs on the same channel, using the same bandwidth, and I can fix that by lowering the channel width, I'll do that. Because I'm not disabling. Remember the problem I said was when we disable an AP, a radio entirely to fix CCI. That's what I don't want to do. But I'm not changing coverage by lowering the channel width. So lowering channel width is the right way to fix that issue. Once we get down to 20s, what I'm saying is that's when you might have to accept some channel contention to have the capacity requirements you want. Don't say 10 enough APs. I guess is what I'm saying to fix it. But yeah, lower channels is great. If the Wi-Fi standard would give me 10 megahertz channels, maybe I'd go down to 10 meg channels in very high density environments. In a stadium, I would take 10 megahertz wide channels. I don't have them, but I would take them.
Isn't that what AFDM is for, Peter?
No, that's another webinar.
Okay. As I was approaching quarter past, there are still more questions, but I think they're gonna be long conversations, so we might need to wrap it there and let Peter get to his Wednesday night. I've taken a lot of his time already.
Yeah.
And any last comments from the panel?
Yeah, awesome conversation from my side. It's been, yeah, really clearly this is a very hot topic with the attendees with all the conversation and chat. So yeah, really appreciate you, Peter, coming on and opening this can of worms with us and digging through all the technical details.
Absolute pleasure. I love opening cans of worms.
Yeah, always a pleasure, Peter. Thanks for having us, and thanks to everyone for coming along. Really appreciate it.
Awesome. Well, with that, thanks, Peter. Enjoyed this a lot. Sure this will be a repeatedly watched video on YouTube, like your first version of it. And thank you everyone for attending.
Cheers.
Cheers. Thank you very much.